Good morning. How have you been?
I've been well. Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's been interesting.
It's an absolute pleasure. Last time we met, we discussed so many things, but there were still so many things I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
May I?
Here I am.
Okay.
Ask away.
So, um, based on the professional experience that you shared with us and your expertise and all the years that you worked in communication, which then took you from the more corporate world into the NGO world. NGOs, and pardon my ignorance, from what I know, rely heavily on storytelling
Yes.
because they need to package that message well and make sure, goes to the right target audience, that the call to action is well received. However, to do that, very often non-for-profits, very often they work on funding, right, and donations.
Yes.
And part of that storytelling is what helps them raise
To get the money.
those funds, right? So there are many seasons in the world.
Hey.
There are
Lots of things
many,
happening around the
right?
world.
Things change.
Yeah.
Funding can be, you once told me, it can be international, it can be
Can be
regional, it can be
local.
domestic,
Yes.
right? Can you tell me a little bit more about that so that I can understand it better and help our viewers
Yes.
understand it better?
Rafi, you're right on the money about number one, the world dynamics and funding. Um, previ- Prior to 2020, we were all looking to different donors out there. The few entities who could afford or were able to get funding from the US, from the UK, from Europe, wherever, were swimming around happily, going about their business and whatever. Then 2020 comes and it changes all those dynamics. We know what happened. COVID-19 happened. Now, when COVID-19 happened, people lost jobs. Donors died, like died.
Yeah.
I know an organization that depended on a number of family foundations, and most of these family foundations are headed by like grandfather, third generation, then second generation, then third generation, who are now their children who are in charge. And so grandfather is still around and he loves this NGO because he's walked the journey with them and seen where they've gone. And then suddenly he passes on due to COVID-19 related illnesses. And the grandkids think, okay, why were we supporting these guys again?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And they say, oh, sorry, we are channeling our funds to support other causes in the US or in Mexico or something like that. So that happened. 2020 just brought a whole different ball game. Then also other trends are changing. There are male-founded NGOs and then female-founded NGOs. As we go into the times now, the male-funded NGOs are not getting as much attention on the fundraising scene internationally as much as the female ones. Yes, it's a real dynamic now. So there's that dynamic, and then there's political. There is changes of government in the different countries that support. We've been hearing over time that aid from, for example, UK aid has been going down, US aid is also going down, and all those have a ripple effect because they're affecting both the government and the individuals who make their money from government. And if we're getting these funding from those kinds of individuals, it's obviously going to have a ripple effect on us. Even locally, politics has also played a role. If you remember, when we're getting into the 2021 local elections here, there was a big development partner. I think they still are here, called DGF. But DGF was supporting a lot of initiatives in the NGO sector, and their funds were held, and there were so many restrictions and embargoes put on them. They literally had to shut down.
Oh, wow.
And these was there. And when I say a number, there were quite a number of NGOs that were depending on funding and financing from DGF. So that also curtailed. So there's so many dynamics that come into play. Still on the local scene, at one point there was a directive that passed saying that every money or fund or any type of funding that comes in that's going to non-governmental organizations needs to be vetted by the government. So it put, for example, banks in precarious state, because they're wondering. So these people have been backing with us all these years, and every month they receive this amount of money. Now the banks are forced to declare those monies to a certain entity in government. I can't remember which, and they have to be vetted whether they're coming from a political rival or another state rival. And then we have the whole issue of LGBTQ and all those. So those dynamics are playing a huge role in the fundraising scene, a really big role.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because so we have all these dynamics, and then you have all the interested parties, right? The entity or the individual who's donating, the cause they're donating to, those who need to implement it, those who need to benefit. And
all the stakeholders in that ecosystem,
right?
Yeah.
And one never knows where tomorrow's money is going to come from.
Exactly.
So how do NGOs go about it? And how do you help them find ways of going about that? Because, I mean, okay, life is uncertain, typical cliche, but when you need to plan, because you're so responsible, right, on so many different levels, because there are people waiting for medication to come through, operations that need to happen, water that needs to reach,
Exactly.
Right? So
what do you do?
What do you do?
The funding is uncertain.
Yeah.
Now that's where NGOs have had to get creative.
Okay.
And the ones that haven't realized the need to get creative are finding themselves having to close shop and go home, which is really sad, because what about the people who've been waiting? Like you said, the ones who are waiting on the water, the ones who are waiting on the food, the ones who are waiting on the education. So it's been a time of really thinking outside the proverbial box, and getting completely out of the box and just saying, you know what, we must find other sources. So things like getting into corporate partnerships and sponsorships with corporate entities. So the banks, the telcos, and all these business entities, most of them have an arm of corporate social responsibility, because it's impressed upon them that they need to give back to the society that they are working in. And now that giving back entails them creating what I call social enterprise, social support programs. So NGOs that are able to find the right corporate social partner or corporate entity that they can partner with, whose mandate and goal and social intervention is related to what the NGO is doing, those ones have been lucky. So they've had that space in which to grow, to build their own side of things, and to continue to give their beneficiaries the service they need. Then there's been others getting into what they call social entrepreneurship. How this works is you have your beneficiaries produce maybe crafts, bags, shoes, and you create a somewhat separate arm that's like a business arm that helps you generate income.
Okay.
Now, you're not generating that income to run your organization, but you're generating that income to go back into some of those services. So if it's training, that you need to train these ladies to sew, to tailor, to whatever, the products that they make are sold, and then that comes back into ensuring that their training can continue, that their trainers are paid. So for you as an organization, you know that in terms of operations and what, our trainers are covered by, and the servicing of the sewing machines or buying extra machines are covered by the products that the ladies are selling.
So it sustains itself.
So
the skilling sustains itself, right?
So you're not looking at it as a profit making. That's why they call it a social enterprise. So NGOs also have had to look in that direction. And the ones who haven't, when I meet them and we're having a conversation, I tell them, look, yes, it's good, but you're not always going to be putting out that begging bowl. We have to find a way. Because even the funders, they get to a place where there's what we call donor fatigue. And they're saying, no, I mean, we've supported you for 10 plus years. For how long? Like I mentioned, people die, people change direction, strategy changes, vision changes,
Yeah.
and you're still there telling them the same thing. So they'll be looking at that and wondering. So they've also been getting into things like crowdfunding and digital fundraising. There are lots of platforms. There's GoFundMe, there's Fundraiser, there's Global Giving. How this works is, say you have a particular campaign and you just want to raise a certain amount of money. Tell the right story. You're authentic about your story. It is true. It has happened. You want this help. I remember, again, 2020, COVID. I don't know if you heard this, but COVID was the most unsafe time for children who are in their own homes.
Yes. Yeah.
While we thought that homes were their best place, we then realized that maybe school was
Safer.
safer. Because while they were at home, the abuse, both sexually and physically, went through the roof. Now, I'll tell this story. We had a child from the Antonde. The Antonde is in the southwest of Uganda. The Antonde is a cattle keeping corridor. So the people who were there are normally pastoralists, they move on. So for them, children, education, not a big deal. So this little girl, she was about 9 years old. She was sexually abused by one of the cattle herders who was passing through. But the abuse was so intense that when we took her to Mulago Hospital, she needed reconstructive surgery.
Oh my. At the age of 9.
At the age of 9. Middle of COVID. No money coming in from anywhere. And we said, we can't let this girl go through this pain. So we opened up a fundraiser account. We put the girl's story there. And we just told people, our target at the time was just $5,000. We were trying it out for the first time, so we're not even quite sure how it would work. So our target was $5,000. We put it out there and shared it, social media. We had planned to put it out for a month to get our $5,000. In 14 days, 2 weeks, we had gotten $8,000.
Wow.
Because the story, and we kept updating and telling the givers what we were doing with the money. And when we updated with photos of the girl seeing the doctor, of course, identity, you hide her identity, you change her name, you black out her face. But they were able to follow the story and even come back to us and ask, where is baby, I don't know, Angel, I think we called her. So that story, crowdfunding does work if you use it right and you tell the story right. And there are other NGOs and entities that create memberships. So I'm just giving you all these different ways in which these non-for-profits can begin to think outside the box to just ensure they are sustainable financially. So others look at membership. I'll give you an example of the mentorship group I belong to, Girls for Girls. So Girls for Girls is a mentorship platform where women like you and I go in and mentor other young women.
Okay.
To be leaders in whatever field they are in. Now, I love mentoring. I'm mentoring in Girls for Girls as a volunteer. I'm doing it freely. However, I still pay membership. Not much, but I'm paying membership to continue to be a mentor and Girls for Girls, where I'm volunteering, where I could choose to walk away. But because it means something to me, I am there and I am paying that 20,000 that they require a month. I mean, even when you hear the amount 20,000, sounds ridiculous, but collectively, if you, me, and every other woman says we want these girls to go through life and their situations to change, and we're giving, it works. And then, of course, local fundraising activities, those ones we can't step away from them. Fundraising runs, you've heard me many times. Oh, we have this run, this is going on.
Yeah.
So we've had fundraising runs, events, walks, dance competitions, old school events, whatever that you're thinking about. Because also what that helps is it gets the locals to firmly believe that this is our initiative.
Yeah.
Because while you're getting money from everybody else, they just see you as, that's just another entity that belongs to some Western world. But if it's local and it's entrenched locally, people are going to be willing to participate and give to it and grow it. So for me, those are some of the areas that I see fundraising could, NGOs could get into. And then, of course, the grants that we apply for, which also are another dynamic, especially if you're not reaching a certain threshold in terms of your annual finance budget. That affects what you'll get from an EU grant or whatever, because they're looking at your absorption capacity. How much can you take? If you're asking for $300,000, but you haven't passed the $30,000 mark, how are you ever going to? You can put your case there, but chances are they're not going to give it to you. Yeah. So that's like last mile end, and by the time you do that, you're an NGO that has established yourself. You're doing well, and your name is out there.
Yeah, you have the track record.
You have the track record. Yeah.
Gosh, that's a lot of information. There's a lot of technicality behind it as well.
Yes.
What I like, my takeaway is, as you were saying, an external donor, whether it's an individual or an entity, life happens there as well, right? But what I like is the fact that the solutions you're finding are going back to the community, and community can be powerful because, as you were saying, every penny counts. Even if everyone is putting 1,000 shillings, but by the time 1,000,000 shillings have come in, right, it starts making the difference.
It makes a difference.
And I like that. And also, as you were saying, it's a bit like in social media, when you belong, when the content is yours and you belong. If they're featuring your child at school, there's more likelihood you'll share it or that you'll celebrate it. So belonging is very important.
It's very important. And just to add on that one, what you're talking about is what we then call peer-to-peer fundraising. You say, for example, when I organized the Father's Run for one of the NGOs, I came to the men in our business space and I said, could you be a fatherhood ambassador? They said, what do I need to do? I said, I just need your face on a poster, and you are going to share this poster, and you're going to ask your, what do you call it, your ecosystem, your people, your village, to fundraise 3 million shillings. So whether someone's giving 50, 20, 10, you just need your figure is 3 million shillings. And all these gentlemen were so happy to do that because it wasn't coming from their pocket. So they don't feel the pain of, I have to do this, but they feel, but it's good for them to be able to use their networks.
Yes.
And that's peer-to-peer fundraising. So same thing you were saying, with your child, it is a community.
Yeah.
It's a community, and it's us, it's me to you. You know me, I know you, I'm good for it, I'm invested in this. Yeah.
That's powerful. That's nice. Now, in all these fundraising activities, I'm sure to err is human.
Yes.
Can NGOs sometimes make mistakes as they go along the way?
Of course. We've made mistakes. Sometimes choosing the wrong, what we thought. Sometimes you think, okay, this is the wrong, rather the thing we need to do to raise these funds. And you haven't factored in the fact that maybe, first of all, the audience you're targeting doesn't quite know you well because you haven't been around long enough. Secondly, say you're going to a corporate entity, you have no idea what their corporate social responsibility program is that year. For maybe you can find that for this particular bank, for the next 3 years, you're concentrating on education. And there you are with your proposal, and you're saying, we are going to fix boreholes, and we're just going to dig wells. And they're looking at it and they're saying, but our money is going to education. It doesn't matter that the boreholes are going into a school or something. It's still not really related to what they're. So most NGOs get it wrong around there.
Okay.
Because they haven't done enough homework to know what the corporate entities are doing and how they can jump into them. Then there are times where they have just not come up with a fundraising strategy. So you don't have a strategy.
You need a plan, right?
You don't have a
Yeah,
plan.
yeah,
You wake up in the morning and just say, okay, we're going to do ABC. And then you're thinking, how does this relate? Like, fine, maybe you have a strategic vision. So you have a strategic vision, well and good. But what does that say to the fundraising needs that you have? So your fundraising needs really have to just, you have to be targeted, you have to be strategic, you have to be looking at what you have already planned. So most NGOs don't have that fundraising plan. They haven't made themselves aware of what the corporate entities have. Their brand is not even really known, and they're coming up with this seemingly big thing, and they have huge dreams and big names, but you put the letter there and they're like, who are you? I've never heard of you. Yeah. So those are some of the few I can think of.
Yeah. A cry in the wild. Then it's not going to be
how
read the right way.
I like how you call it a cry in the wild. Yes. Yeah.
And no, because there are these challenges, because it boils down to how you manage your business as an NGO, right? When you're looking for funding. What trends do you see shaping the future of fundraising in Africa right now? Or are there any that you're picking up on, or is it too early in the year to define? Or
It's not too early. It's actually just the right time. We're like on the cusp of so many things. It's a very exciting time right now, right? It's the trends now. People have to be thinking innovation. They have to be thinking collaboration. They have to be thinking sustainability. So innovation. What are the trends in digital marketing and the digital space? We're here on a podcast. How many NGOs have stories to tell, but they've never thought about creating a podcast for their stories? We are talking about digital fundraising. Everybody has a mobile phone now. How are we doing to send the message out? What message do we craft and what do we share? How do we create those platforms? The only thing we keep saying, oh, the children spend so much time on TikTok, I can't create my... Have you tried? We have a friend, a mutual friend, who tells us, TikTok has worked for me.
yeah,
Granted, she's in business, but the way she tells her story, and she's using the local language. Now imagine the power of what she's doing was about advocating for a change in something. How many people would be moved to advocate? We saw that happen in neighboring Kenya. All the riots that happened in 2024 with the young people and everybody, suddenly everybody knew what Gen Zs were and we were the ones who didn't know them before. It was because they were leveraging digital technology and what's on the ground right now. So being able to just recognize what's happening, what's going on. The new buzzword is AI this, AI that. A lot of people are still very ignorant about it. They're not cognizant of the fact that right now we are really on the cusp of something. Even the big English word escapes me, but like there is something, it's going on, it's happening, but how are we getting ourselves in the right right there in the middle of the eye of the storm and making sure that this is not leaving me behind?
Yes.
I am part of it. People are talking about digital money and we are still asking for physical money. Are there ways we can fundraise using digital money? Are there people who have big crypto, what do you call it, Bitcoin that's lying around that we could target? Or are we still looking at the guys who are counting dollars and money in shillings? So those kinds of things. Think about that whole area of social enterprise. What can we sell? What can we get money out of? Because we need to also be a corporate entity of sorts. Most NGOs like to run themselves like a small village outfit that has no systems, nothing in place. So when they come into the business space, they're overwhelmed. Like, oh my God, these people. But you can't walk into a business space. If you want to have a conversation with them, you have to be doing things in a certain way. Your formal setting has to be right. Your registrations have to be right. Your procurement processes have to be right. That way, even when you speak, even when a donor says, I want to see your books of accounts for the last 3 years, you're not going to tell them, as we're an NGO, we don't audit. We don't,
No.
it's not possible.
It's not, yeah.
So you need to be in those places and then get into that whole space of, like I said, the social entrepreneurship. What are we giving? If we say we are skilling to what end? Skilling to what end? Because there should be we should be seeing a product at the end. So how do we provide market for that product so that the product both helps both the beneficiary and us as the. And then, of course, local philanthropy, like we said, and that community giving. Ugandans generally are very good at heart.
Yeah.
They like to give. Although they like to give in a particular way. Maybe not so much cash, but they will give time. They will give in kind.
Yeah.
If you walk to this organization and say, look, we have an HR department, but our HR needs maybe extra training. Our HR needs support defining the HR manuals. Our finance person also needs help with the finance manuals and operational manuals. These are services a corporate entity can give you without feeling the pinch. But it saves you. Just imagine how much you'd have to pay an HR consultant to come and do that. So we also have to be to just switch our brains and say, if I go to this case, I'm not always asking about money. I'm asking about technical advice. I'm asking about expertise. Products you're already producing. You don't have to create anything, another new product line for me. Yogurt. You say our girls, our babies need yogurt. And then my friends from Happy Spoon, one of the NGOs, they used to come and they asked me, how many liters of yogurt do they need every week?
Wow.
And every week they would provide yogurt. It didn't take away from their business model or their profits, because this was still a way for them to give back and just make sure that these kids have a healthy extra calcium supplement through the yogurt and whatever. So it's just being able to think like that and approach the donors, the givers, even the local entities in that sense. Quite honest, there's a lot of donor fatigue. It's almost next to impossible getting money from anybody right now.
And as you were saying, the fact that if you are a non-for-profit, there's moral and financial accountability needed, right? Because you're asking, and usually people are asking not for small amounts when they're asking for cash, right?
No.
So if there's donor fatigue, you're asking for a lot, and you're not set up in the right way, you'll struggle.
You will struggle.
And then to help them overcome this, in comes the branding, the storytelling, the communication element, right? And that's where you step in.
That's where I step in. And so people connect emotionally. The brain connects emotionally. It doesn't matter how many numbers and stats you show them. Rafi, tell me what statistics of children have been, I don't know what, are going hungry in Kampala.
Yeah, okay.
You're probably seeing it on TV running a UNICEF ad or something.
Yeah.
But that figure, that number is not sticking.
Yeah.
But if they show you the story of that child and their porridge, and you're going to remember.
Like Baby Angel, right?
Yeah. You're going to remember. So people connect. They connect emotionally. They connect with stories. And that's where we have been, if I may, fighting the battle with our NGOs and our friends. We're saying, guys, tell the story so that people hear you and then they can fund you. I like to say, be findable and then you can be fundable.
Okay, yeah.
I picked this from another NGO that does something similar to what I do. Friends that I met, they're called Mighty Ally. And they just said, just be findable so you can be fundable. And if you're findable, how are you findable? You're findable in how you're telling your story. You're findable in where you're telling your story. You're findable in the spaces that you lend your voice to and the change you are doing in society. So at Cela Consult, that's more basically, or more or less the journey we walk with you, we're just looking at how are you set up? Where are you? How can we walk this journey with you?
Okay.
And we take that all through. Funders are looking at authenticity. They want to see where their money is going. Have your books of accounts clearly defined and audited. They want to see what impact you're making, and that impact still goes back to the story. You're going to give them the numbers, yes, but they still want to see the story. And you can tell the story in so many different ways. So really, it's about how are you taking that message out there for people to know you are there, our money is doing something, and we're seeing it bring some results back. Yeah.
Now, all these tips and tricks, if one wants to, they can learn from you. I believe you're running a masterclass course. Can you tell me a little bit more about that before we wind up?
Oh, yes. That I am really excited about, Rafi. So let me take you a step back, if you don't mind. Last year, I ran with the two friends of mine. We ran 2 workshops, and the workshops were understanding the CSR landscape, some of what I've just talked about. Understand what the corporate entities are looking for, sustainability, how are you aligned with the sustainable development goals, what change are you making, what difference, and then how do you communicate with these guys?
I'm trying to I understand there's a lot, yes.
Okay. Am I speaking too fast? All right, so we did that last year, so now let me slow down a bit. This is an 8-week fundraising masterclass. Now, in those 8 weeks, we want to, number one, out of those 8 weeks, we want somebody to come out with a clearly defined fundraising strategy, which I can sort of bet my right hand not many NGOs have. They have a strategic vision, but they haven't come out and pulled out the fundraising strategy. So we want at that point to come out with a fundraising strategy. The other thing that we want to come through that is for NGOs to know how to tell their story and to tell it right, using the right language, the right platforms, and going into the right spaces. And then finally, we want to be able to have people who are empowered. One of the biggest weaknesses with many NGOs is funding, and that funding affects everything else. So they don't hire right. They just
your choices are less.
So you find an executive director who is overwhelmed. They don't sleep because they are writing proposal after proposal. So we want them to send even their communications officer, if they have one, or a volunteer who's shown interest in running these activities, and let's equip them so that at the end of the day, you can have a pool. Over time, as we do these master classes, we'll build them into something where at some point we can have a pool of fundraising experts that are trained, that are versatile, that can do different things. If we find in that group there is one who is so good at doing local events, why not? They have another income generating activity for them and themselves and for Cela Consult. So that's kind of the space that I'm going into with this 8-week masterclass, fundraising masterclass. And of course, just to understand the basics. What is fundraising? How do you do it? How do you build the relationship? How do you acquire donors? How do you keep them? How do you keep them engaged? How do you report to them? How do you write the reports that you're sending to them? What's the frequency of those reporting structures? etc. Fundraising is so huge, Rafi, that I'm considering doing a PhD in it.
Wow. And the nice thing, people don't need to walk that journey alone then, because if number one, you'd be imparting them with, this knowledge, these skills, etc. But then it's a class, right? So people can bounce ideas off each other, learn from each other. This worked for us, maybe it'll work for you, right? And I think there's great value to this knowledge, right? You're guiding it, and then they're sharing it, and you're also introducing them to other service providers that they can tap into.
Exactly.
Right?
I should bring you on board as one of my facilitators. You know the course well.
Thank you. So if people need more information about this masterclass, or if they want to reach out to you directly, where can they find this information?
LinkedIn.
Okay. That's
LinkedIn,
where they'll
Doris
find you.
Mitti Kimuli,
Mm-hmm.
or Cela Consult. It's still on LinkedIn.
Okay.
They'll find that information. They'll find the link to register, and we'll be in touch with them. So yes, it's. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. Before we go, I found this amazing individual who, when he saw my flyer, said, I did a whole fundraising course in the US, and I've been trying to set up this thing. So I thought to myself, let's have a conversation. And the more we talked, we talked for a whole day, Rafi. We talked the whole day because it was so exciting to find somebody whom I could relate with on that level of understanding and information. We both knew. So yeah, I can't wait for this gentleman to join us also in this fundraising masterclass. It's gonna be amazing.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So do come 8 weeks, so weekly once. So that's 1.5 hours a week. We have exercises. Like you said, it's not a lecture. It's not a lecture room where you're going to listen to me going on and on about stuff. It's us sharing. It's us learning from each other. Adults learn through experience. Adults learn through doing, and they don't learn it from being talked at. So we're going to.
It's
learn
tangible,
together.
right? I mean, it's tangible.
There's assignments. There's coursework. So
Wow.
why not? Yeah. And then we don't want this information to just remain with a one person, because the assignments that we're going to give involve them having to go back to their teams and their executive directors and their finance people.
It's all interlinked, right? It's
So,
not going to happen
yes.
alone.
Because you can't do the fundraising if you don't know what the finance person has in their books, or what they need, or you don't know what the program team has designed as their program activities for that year or that month, because they are depending on you to bring in the financing. So you need to know what's going on there. So at the end of every class, people should come prepared to do some work. It's not just another sit session, walk out. We'll do work, come back, and then have sessions to share and evaluate. And if somebody has had a successful event or something they've done and it's really been successful and they're willing to share, we'll learn from each other.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for enlightening us about that, and for all those struggling there, putting bids together, submitting proposals. Don't be alone. Do please join the masterclass. Obviously, lots to be learned, which will have huge benefits on so many levels. So we look forward. Hopefully, you'll come back and tell us how it went.
Yes,
Yeah,
I hope so.
and share more stories with us.
I hope so. I'll invite you to film one of the sessions, maybe.
Wonderful.
Hopefully. Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Do please follow us. This is Studio 84, and we were so happy to have you over, Doris. Till the next one.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.